Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is Gianni DePoci, your host, and I'm joined this week by a very special guest, one of our very own analysts and graduate of the Merriman Market Timing Academy, Matthieu Kaiser from France. Matthieu, how are you doing?
Hello, Gianni. I'm fine, and you?
Good. Thank you for joining me today. We have a lot to talk about. Matthew's nickname is Dr. Copper. We kind of took that from the overall market nickname that we assigned to that commodity. But Matthieu is going to be featured in our mid-year MMA webinar on the 16th of June, 16th of July. And so we wanted to get him in here this week. He's been on the show before, but we wanted to have him back to kind of warm up viewers to his style of market analysis. So without further ado, Matthieu, let's go ahead and look at some charts and see what happened in the market this past week. Obviously, the main signature that we had coming into the week, it was a holiday in the United States for Independence Day on July 4th. Markets were closed, so only 4 trading days this week. But we had Venus square Uranus at the beginning of the week. And normally that's a breakout signature, but it didn't really happen this time around. So, Matthieu, what's your take on what's going on in the Dow Jones here? We're down well off the highs of the week.
Well, yes, it was either a breakout or a breakdown, and maybe we may have seen the top in the US stock indices. That we are expecting an important bottom at the end of July, and the question was, will it be after a sharp decline or a soft decline? And I'm a bit concerned that it will be a sharp decline. And that ties in with the fact that, there is a lot of uncertainty in the market with investors now about the future Fed policy, recession concerns. And my concern is that actually fears are setting in about recessions and about the fact that maybe the Fed has taken tightening too much too long.
Well, it's interesting you raised that point about the Fed tightening, because we have Venus retrograde coming up later this month, begins on July 22nd. And a lot of times we see shifts in monetary policy from central bankers around that time. They've gone a couple meetings without raising rates, but Matthieu, this past week we had a couple really strong jobs reports in the United States. The ADP payroll came in above estimates. The non-farm payroll on Friday was a little bit below estimates, but overall, the job market in the United States is very, very strong. So I think the Fed might even continue to raise rates here. And, it sounds like that could lead to increased volatility in the market going forward. I do want to take a look at the NASDAQ real quick too, Matthieu, because, I mentioned the Venus square Uranus, and Uranus rules tech. So what's your take on the tech trade and what's going on in the NASDAQ? Because it does look quite a bit more bullish than the Dow right now.
Yes, exactly. Well, it was a bit expected because as soon as Saturn left Aquarius, which is related to tech, we saw NASDAQ take off, and that was what we were expecting actually. Now it's in Pisces, which is not so good for oil, but as for tech stocks, it's very good. But the thing is that, once again, we are expecting a low in this market too. And it has been also lifted by a few stocks, actually. It has been quite a narrow rally, we could say, propelled by artificial intelligence, for example. And what is interesting, Gianni, is that we had Pluto in Aquarius. Now it has gone back to Capricorn, and we have seen the NASDAQ, range trading since then, and now we may be past the top in this cycle. What do you think?
It's interesting how when we compare to the futures, this past week we had the S&P September contract make a new cycle high, but not the NASDAQ September contract, nor the Dow Jones. So we do have a case of intermarket bearish divergence here, and that's something you usually see at important market turning points. So you brought up crude oil. Let's pivot to that because you mentioned Saturn in Pisces and a really nice strong finish to the week here. And one of our rules over here at MMA is that we look for intermediate term cycle lows to unfold in sectors ruled by the sign that Saturn is transiting. So so far so good on this rule. As you know, we're looking at USO, which is the crude oil fund. The spot price of crude oil made a new low in May, but still satisfying that orb for an intermediate term low in the energy market. So Matthieu, what's your take on the energy market and how that might be impacted by the geocosmics?
Well, I must say that I'm a bit confused on oil because
Typical Pisces, right?
you know,
Typical
I was
Pisces
very
market.
yes, this is a feature of Neptune retrograde, of course, but actually, I thought that the three bottom was in March, and we had this low which was lower in May.
Yeah.
So either I was right, and now we are in a bearish intermediate term cycle, and it is quite concerning for oil, or I was wrong, and the 3-year bottom was in May, and so we are expecting a very bullish trend now. The thing is that what is a bit concerning is that this low we had in March was when Saturn ingressed in Pisces, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, it backs up this idea, but I don't know, and you're right, we are finishing the week very strong on oil, or quite strong. Anyway, I think we may see a short-term bottom in the next weeks, but I would be a bit confused about setting some targets on it.
Yeah.
But you're
Okay.
the expert on oil. What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, you know, you hit the nail on the head. Is if we're in a new intermediate term cycle, then I would expect crude oil to be bullish into the second half of the year. You know, it's crazy to think we're already in the second half of 2023 already. But if that intermediate term low in May holds, and I'll actually pull up a price of spot price of crude oil just for more clarity. This isolated low occurred in the overnight session, so it wasn't reflected in the previous chart. But yeah, I think if this was the intermediate term low, you know, not long after Saturn ingressed into Pisces, which was back in March, then crude oil should see a nice rally into year end, and that's going to put additional pressure on the central banks around the world when it comes to inflation. If we see energy start to rally again, Matthieu, let's actually take a look at Bitcoin because, you know, nice, you know, it's been a pretty volatile week, but a, you know, nice rally here on Friday. You know, we had Venus coming into the square with Uranus at the beginning of this week. We had some high expectations for a potential breakout. We have to be a little bit cautious here. Some intermarket bearish divergence with Ethereum as well. But I really like what's going on in Bitcoin. And I'm also going to pull up some mining stocks, crypto mining stocks. So Matthieu, what's your take on what's going on in the cryptocurrency market right now?
Well, I think medium term the trend is bullish. We have this Uranus in Taurus signature, which is very positive for crypto and finance in general, but financial innovation especially. So yes, I think it's interesting what's happening now. The thing which concerns me a bit is that if we look at oscillators, we see that the market has been a bit overbought this week. So maybe we will see some consolidation next week.
Well, you know, so I said I was going to look at the miners, and I'm going to hold myself to that. You know, you have these cryptocurrency miners in the United States, Riot Blockchain. You know, we did see a breakout with this, you know, per Venus square Uranus this past week. You have Marathon Digital Holdings as well, breaking out to new multi-month highs. You have MicroStrategy, you know, all very important stocks in the cryptocurrency sector rallying to new multi-month highs. This is bullish price action and what we normally want to see under a signature like Venus square Uranus, which we had on July 2nd. Now, looking into the week ahead, not that much geocosmic activity, only Mars going into Virgo on the 10th of July and Venus ingressing into the sign of Leo on the 11th. But Matthieu, I do want to bring up copper because, like I said at the beginning, you are known as Dr. Copper within the MMA organization. And without, you know, sharing too much of your secrets, what's your take on copper? Any geocosmics that you're looking at? Obviously, you're going to give us an in-depth rundown on this asset class. come the mid-year webinar on the 16th?
Well, my take is very bullish on copper now. I think we've passed a very important bottom at the end of June, at the end of May, sorry.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because it respected an upward trend line, which has formed since the 4-year cycle in 2020. And so the long-term trend is bullish. Fundamentals are backing this up also. But I'm expecting an important low next year. In the meantime, I'm expecting a significant rally in copper, and I think that macro trends are supportive for this metal.
Very good. Sticking with the theme of metals, let's take a look at gold miners here. Gold also a nice finish to the week here. Well, actually, let's look at the price of the spot gold, because we were talking about this in our weekly and daily reports for quite some time. We had a downside objective in the 1900, 1910 area, and we satisfied that downside target. It looks like we just had a Lendl wiggle unfold here yesterday, because today on Friday we're getting a nice rally. So gold looking like it's in the early stages of a new cycle, which is pretty bullish, I think. So what are you seeing in the precious metal market, Matthieu? Obviously, we just had Neptune go retrograde last week as well.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think that this juncture is bullish for precious metals. This is the same for silver, by the way. And I think it goes together with the fact that we have also an important bottom in the US Treasury. And as you know, these markets are linked, are related. And if we see some softening of in the US Treasury market, then it will be very bullish for precious metals.
Indeed, we're looking at TLT here now, which is a long-term, Treasury bond ETF. And we usually cover the T notes, which is the 10-year Treasury note, in the weekly and daily reports, and our downside price objectives were satisfied this past week, and it did so, kind of in the outer orb of the critical reversal dates. So interesting price action here in the bond markets, but obviously interest rates still ticking upward right now. We'll have to see if Venus retrograde later this month changes any of the expectations by market participants. So let's see. The last market that I wanted to look at with you, Matthieu, is the US dollar. So obviously you're over in France. Looking at UUP, the US dollar ETF now, because we don't have the closing price for the euro. But are we going to get a nice rally in the euro for the summer tourist season? So all the Americans coming overseas are going to have to pay more when they visit.
Yes, you're concerned for your own holiday, Jenny. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yes, I think that in the very short term we're in for some rally in euro dollar, yes. But longer term, I'm not so optimistic for the euro. For fundamental and cyclical reasons. I think that we had a 16-year bottom in 2017. We had an intermediate term or slower 5-year bottom in 2022, and it was lower. And so it means that the 16-year cycle is bearish, which means that on the longer term, it's not very good for the euro. It's not good looking. But for your holiday, I'm a bit concerned, Johnny. It will be more expensive than you thought.
Yeah, I know. It always happens that whenever we go back in the summer, the euro rallies. So, this low that we formed in the euro here this past week looks to have coincided with the Venus Uranus square signature. So, you don't always necessarily get breakouts or breakdowns when Uranus is involved. And we know that sometimes you get false moves. But given that Venus rules currencies, this looks to have been an important low in the euro. It's another higher low with respect to the trend. And, we had a primary cycle low unfold in the euro back here on May 31st, and that came in as a higher low. So to kind of summarize, making sure I understood you correctly, Matthieu, is that the long-term trend in the euro is bearish, but short-term, we do have an uptrend, and we could see a continued rally into the next couple months at the least.
Yes, exactly. That's what
Yeah.
I meant. Yes.
Well, we'll see if Venus retrograde throws a wrench into that. Obviously, Venus is going to be retrograde until the beginning of September. So we're kind of looking for an important high to form in the euro between the end of July and the beginning of September. I would
Exactly.
surmise.
Well, yes. Well, what I think is that actually this Venus retrograde could coincide with the fact that the Fed could be forced into, being softer on this,
Oh,
at
really?
least
Wow.
in
Okay.
its speech, and maybe in its actions. And so, if it's the case, it means that by the time that we have this Venus retrograde and the Fed meeting, we will have data or market action, which will be a bit nasty.
Yeah.
But well, we'll see. But I think, yes, what you just said about the euro dollar is, I think, is a good timing. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's all the time that we had for today, Matthieu. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find Matthieu's work and all of our work at www.mmacycles.com. Like I said at the beginning, Matthieu's going to be joining us on our mid-year webinar on the 16th of July. This upcoming week on the 10th and 11th, we will have the monthly publications of the monthly cycles report, which is MMA's flagship fund, been in publication for about 42 years, if I remember correctly. And Matthieu is a featured analyst in that publication as well. So Matthieu, any final words?
Well, no, thank you for having me, and I wish you a very good holiday in Europe.
Okay. Fantastic. Sounds good. And we'll see you on the 16th. Take care.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, ciao.
Goodbye.